Yo, what's going on everybody? I'm your boy Numbskull, and today we're stepping into a different corner of neuropharmacology. This one isn't your typical sedative. This is going to be a mind and molecule breakdown on baclofen, a compound that works deeper in the inhibitory system than most related substances, and this is going to be fulfilling the request of this homie right here. Baclofen is a GABA analog, meaning its structure is based on gamma-aminobutyric acid, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. What allows it to actually function as a drug in the central nervous system is a structural modification, specifically a parachlorophenyl group, which lets across the blood-brain barrier effectively. Even though it's related to GABA structurally, it does not act on GABA-A receptors like benzodiazepines, barbiturates, or alcohol. Its primary target is the GABA-B receptor, which immediately puts it in a different functional category from most commonly known depressants and into one with things like phenibut. GABA-B receptors are metabotropic, meaning they're G-protein coupled rather than ion channels. When baclofen activates these receptors, it engages certain proteins, which leads to the inhibition of adenylyl cyclase and a reduction in cAMP levels inside the neuron. At the same time, it opens inwardly rectifying potassium channels and inhibits voltage-gated calcium channels in a way similar to gabapentin. The potassium efflux hyperpolarizes the neuron, making it less likely to fire, while the reduced calcium influx decreases neurotransmitter release. So instead of rapidly forcing inhibition like GABA-A activation does, baclofen creates a slower, more regulatory suppression of neural activity, both by calming neurons directly and by limiting how much excitatory signaling gets passed forward. A big part of baclofen's real-world effect comes from its action in the spinal cord. It suppresses excitatory transmission between incoming sensory neurons and motor neurons, which reduces muscle spasticity, dampens reflex loops, and decreases involuntary contractions. Now, that's why it's widely used medically for conditions involving muscle rigidity, but it doesn't stay localized. In the brain, GABA-B receptors are spread across cortical, limbic, and midbrain regions, so baclofen ends up influencing mood, cognition, and motivation as well. One of the more interesting aspects of baclofen pharmacology is its interaction with the dopamine system. In the ventral tegmental area, activation of GABA-B receptors inhibits dopaminergic neuron firing. That leads to reduced dopamine release in the nucleus accumbens, which is a core part of the brain's reward circuitry. The result is a dampening of reinforcement signaling. This is why baclofen has been explored as a treatment for substance use disorders, especially alcohol, because it can reduce cravings and blunt the reward response. It doesn't create a heavily dopaminergic high. Now, subjectively, this translates into a state that's more about quieting than your typical intoxication. At usual levels, people tend to feel physically relaxed, with reduced muscle tension and a general sense of calm. There can be mild sedation, a slowing of thought, and a kind of emotional leveling where highs and lows both feel less intense. It lowers the baseline level of internal noise both physically and mentally. At higher levels, those same effects become more pronounced. Sedation deepens, cognition slows further, coordination can drop off, and the overall experience becomes heavier and more subdued. There can be dizziness or confusion, especially as neural signaling continues to be suppressed. Compared to GABA-A drugs, it tends to feel less like a buzz and more like a gradual dimming of activity across multiple systems. Some people still report a sense of comfort or body-based ease, but it's not driven by reward signaling in the same way as other depressants. The difference between GABA-A and GABA-B activity is what really defines this experience. GABA-A receptors are fast, ionotropic channels that allow chloride ions to rush into neurons, producing rapid and strong inhibition. That's what leads to the classic effects of alcohol or benzodiazepines, like disinhibition, euphoria, and immediate sedation. GABA-B receptors, on the other hand, work through second messenger systems. Their effects are slower, more prolonged, and more modulatory. Instead of hitting hard and fast, they gradually shift the overall excitability of the system downward. Pharmacokinetically, baclofen is absorbed orally with a moderate onset time, usually starting within 1 to 2 hours and peaking around 2 to 4 hours. The duration typically sits in the range of 6 to 8 hours, though that can stretch longer depending on the amount taken and individual physiology, of course. It isn't heavily metabolized by the liver, and a large portion is excreted unchanged by the kidneys, which means clearance is more dependent on renal function than hepatic metabolism. With repeated use, the brain adapts to ongoing GABA B activation. This leads to tolerance, where the same amount produces less effect over time. If someone uses it consistently and then stops suddenly, withdrawal symptoms can occur. These can include anxiety, insomnia, agitation, and a rebound increase in neural excitability. In more severe cases, especially after heavy or very prolonged use, this can escalate into hallucinations or seizures. That rebound effect is the nervous system readjusting after being held in a suppressed state. When it comes to interactions, baclofen's depressant nature means it stacks with other substances that reduce neural activity. Alcohol, benzodiazepines, opioids, and many other sedatives can all amplify its effects. This can increase sedation and impairment significantly, and at higher combined levels, it can push into dangerous territory by suppressing vital functions like breathing. That risk comes from cumulative inhibition at multiple points in the nervous system at once. Stepping back, baclofen is best understood as a regulator rather than a driver. It doesn't stimulate, and it doesn't strongly reward. It reduces excitatory signaling, dampens dopamine output, and shifts the brain into a quieter, lower activity state. On a molecular level, it is protein signaling, potassium channel activation, and reduced calcium-dependent neurotransmitter release. On a systems level, it's decreased neural firing and less communication between excitatory pathways. And on a subjective level, it's physical relaxation, mental slowing, and a reduction in overall sensitivity. And that is baclofen, through the mind and molecule lens. I do hope you all enjoyed and could learn something you find interesting or useful from me. If you did, or if you just like the sound of my voice, do leave a like and consider subscribing, please. Leave a comment letting me know if there's something specific you'd like to see next, and if you've got a story to share, send it into my Instagram, Facebook, or if you lack those, my TikTok DMs, and I'll get it posted up in no time. I'd love to read them. Stay frosty, stay curious, and as always, stay safe out there. And with that, I will of course see all of you in the next one. Peace.